Hello, everyone. A very good evening. Thanks for making time out today, Saturday. And we have two lovely speakers here, Kathy and Mesong. So let me introduce you to Kathy first. Kathy is a data and technology enthusiast helping and transforming organizations in the commodity space. She helped clients across the energy, agriculture, and metal businesses define and execute transformation roadmaps, maximize and scale business value through the strategic application of data, advanced analytics, and automation, bringing the modern distributed architecture principles to the domain of data. She has set up enterprise data strategy and architect data platforms to establish data products as the business assets. So much. Thank you, Kathy, for making time out and being here. It's a wonderful pleasure to have you here. Now,
Thank you,
Mesong, yeah,
Thank you, Sharmishta, for having me.
yeah. And we also have Mesong Young. She's a Texas licensed professional engineer in engineering. She has 20 plus years in depth oil field experience gained from small P backend teams to major E&P operators on data driven oil and gas asset development, merger and acquisitions, and divestiture. She has published 4 SP papers and held one UK patent. Mesong is on actively on diversity and inclusion in both corporate and community by volunteering at various local organizations. Currently, she serves as a committee member at the Digital Energy Technical section in the Society of Petroleum Engineers. Mesong holds a bachelor's degree from East China University of Science and Technology and master's degree from Texas Tech, both in chemical engineering. So, thank you, Mesong, once again for being here and joining us. So, we will start with some use cases, and I think we have already audiences coming in, and people have asked questions on automation and MLOps on the petroleum and gas industry. So hold on, let's get started. What is the oil and natural gas industry? Let's hear about from Kathy from the data perspective, sometimes of the trends and AI/ML use cases that Mesong is also working on, and then we'll go into MLOps. My first question to Kathy on the data side, what are the different use cases do you see that are coming up or which people are asking for using AI and using data and oil and natural gas industry in the your sector? Yeah.
Sure, Sharmishta. I think data, is the new oil, right? We are talking about the oil and gas industry or even, energy and commodities everywhere. Data has a lot of, use cases. And it is, I will say that data is the foundation for digitalization, right? You need to have sound data, right, on top of which you can actually go digital. So some of the use cases that we recently worked on was for one of the commodities clients in the agricultural space, right, which was the digital twins, right? So that was and this is the use case which is there in the oil and gas industry as well, right? So you have refineries, you have, your production units. Digital twins is one where you can, actually look at maximizing the asset performance, right? Where you actually create a data twin for your asset, right? Which is a digital twin of your data, of your, physical asset. And then, there are a lot of use cases with respect to asset, performance. There are a lot of use cases with respect to profit optimization, where you actually ensure that your end to end process, which is going through these physical assets, through these physical machinery, is optimized, right? So that's one of the key use case that, the industry is focusing on, right? Another key that I will talk about is, is in the power industry, right? Smart grids, right? Smart grids are generating a lot of data, right? So that data is important to understand and to predict outages, to prevent outages, right? And also the grids now are coming as, becoming the hybrid systems, right? Earlier, the power that was put on the grids was all coming from the conventional fossil fuel sources, right? Now there is so much of renewable in the mix, right? So now these grids need to be balanced in the real time, right? Which is, how much energy is put and how much energy is taken out, right? The supply and demand has to be matched real time. and it
Mm-hmm.
is important, and renewable is intermittent, right? You may not have the right sun, right? You might not have that kind of energy produced at that point of time, so it is important for grid operators and the grids to actually switch to conventional, right, in terms of. So I think all these places AI and ML plays a great part in doing this. So Miss Song, do you
Yeah.
want to add something based on your experiences?
Of course. First of all, thank you, Shamisha and Kiati. It's a great honor to have this panel discussion with you all to share my experience on big data, AI, machine learning in the conventional, traditional oil and gas industry. So, in my past experience, pandemic accelerated the digitalization in the oil field. At the same time, I want to emphasize that actually 20 years ago, it is the oil and gas industry rather than the tech companies who had the best supercomputers to collect the data from the exploration and the operation. And in the past, we already started the applications such as smart field, or sometimes we call it the digital field, or intelligent completion, etc., etc. So using the data to improve the daily operation isn't a new trick in the oil and gas industry. Some typical examples in the daily operation I have used or I experienced I can use several examples. One could be the analog study. So we select existing fields with similar depositional environment, geological properties, and the reservoir characters to guide the prediction in the new field development, to design the well spacing, to forecast the well performance, to define the number of wells to develop this reservoir, to optimize the drilling and the completion strategies. Another one we used as a reservoir engineer would be using the geostatistic modeling. Geostatistic modeling is a critical part of reservoir characterization. And basically, it's a process to generate a model of the subsurface by using geostatistic methods. Eventually, we develop a detailed model using only sparse data, such as the logs or the core data, in a large. Those are just from a few wells in a large area, and the knowledge of the depositional system and the structure setting to estimate the subsurface characteristics between the wells. Geostatistical models are largely and commonly used for the reservoir simulation and the reservoir management. So those are more daily usage we have been using all those years.
Mm-hmm. Kathy, what is a problem related to data? Because I understand these data are from remote, very remote sources, right? So, how do we develop and collect those data and build so that we can actually leverage AI ML? Means how?
Yeah,
What are the challenges we see? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I think, the key challenge is having the right data with the right quality, right? I think that is important, right? Uh, the data which comes is coming from the source of the truth, which is reliable, right? So if the data is not good, right, your models will not help much, right? So I think one of the key challenges to ensure that the data is good, right? Data quality is one of the key challenge. Another thing is that, generally, if I talk about what we have seen with most of our clients, right? So the data is there in multiple systems, right? And when the data needs to come together, right, we need to ensure that the data can talk to each other, right? When data can talk to each other, that means, the business taxonomy around that data, right, has to be well understood in order to connect that data, to connect that information together. That's another one, right? When you're sourcing data from various places, from various systems, from various third party systems and all, then how do you model that into a common data model so that you can actually look into for an enterprise at an integrated business planning level, right? So that's the data harmonization is the key, right? So the data may be coming, the same data being talked in different systems in a different way, is being represented in a different way. So data harmonization becomes the other key challenge, right? So these are some of the things: data quality, data harmonization, ensuring the data is available at real time, right? Data integrity standards being followed. So these are some of the things that the platform needs to ensure, right? When the data is coming, that's there.
Right. And Miss Song, then once we validate the data, means what are the challenges do you have you experienced in putting them into real time models? Means do you train and get the predictions say after some time, or is it also the predictions can happen real time? Or what other challenges have you faced? You're on mute, Miss Song. You're on mute. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I view two type of challenges. One is at the industry level, in this AI and development, because my industry is a fossil fuel industry, typically viewed as a relatively
Mm-hmm.
isolated industry. Not so many people know us very well. We kind of set up ourselves to do our own things, sometimes it's generate a little bit bias or suspicion, and a few or some few people view us as an environmental monster. Actually, that's not true. We care Mother Earth. We want to deliver affordable and sustainable energy to the community and the society. So, oh, this is the optical we see in the cultural side, even in the technical development. And now I see the industry is reaching out more and more to the general public, use various approach to introduce ourselves. I use myself as an example, join this panel discussion, share my experience with everybody, and take your feedback to the industry, see how we can further improve it. And in order to better use the data and the AI strategy, the one limitation, I would say one constraint we had is we have very quite compartmentalized team structure to use the data. And because of the competition, we have those metadata that are not standardized. Each
Yeah.
company may have very different nomenclature to store the data, to classify them. And the operators and the service companies have different priorities and stakeholders. So to conquer that challenge, I think open collaboration among all the disciplines within the company or between companies, including those tech companies, those business companies, were needed for the future innovation of our industry. So that's from the industry level. For at the application level, and subsurface heterogeneity is the biggest issue for the data deployment, because it is a subsurface property. People cannot see it, people cannot sense it, and it's not homogeneous like the air we have right now. We have one measurements, we think like a 10 mile away from it, it will be similar properties. No, it has a huge heterogeneity with the fault, with a different deposition, with a different geology characterization. Then can we put a lot of sensors that to collect the data? Unfortunately, we couldn't. The cost for the subsurface sensors is extremely high. Is several order of difference than the surface sensors in terms of the cost. So those will hinge the efficient analysis. So to conquer this challenge, we have to use the domain knowledge to
That's
understand the indication of the data. Then we can extract the value of the data by interpretation and effective decision making.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Song, for clearly clarifying how much domain knowledge is important. There is, I think, some of the people who are just data scientists like me would lack. We need domain specialists. So Kathy, taking that from after we get the domain knowledge and extract the data relevant, what do you think? You have already talked about, given us light on data, understanding the data validations, the glossary. What else do you think that help us to build and larger? There's a question coming here. So how do we build data strategy and deployment at scale? So how are we doing that in your natural gas and oil industry?
Yeah. So I think Ms. Song brought a very good point, which I was also touching with data harmonization. So that's important because within the organization, people are talking about the same data but using different terms about that data, right? And that's where the business taxonomy is one thing which is very important, where the domain knowledge comes in. Data itself become powerless, right? If the right domain knowledge is not there, and any ML model or any data product, right, is useful only when there is a domain knowledge involved. The subject matter experts are involved to understand what you really want to derive out of that data. So in terms of organization today strategizing deployment at scale, so there are multiple, right? I think a lot of factors play a part in this, right? It depends upon what your organization is, how your organization is structured, right? Small scale organizations versus large scale organization, global organizations versus some of the regional organizations. So organization play a big part. Another part is how your processes are distributed across the value chain. So that also plays a key part in in organizing your data, right? So your organization play a part, your business value chain plays a part, wherein your processes come into picture. And then third is right, what are the use cases that you want to solve for, right? And the use cases depend, right? So for example, in oil and gas industry, there are a lot of real time use cases, right? That plays a good part in terms of how your data, what data strategy you should have. But and on the other side, right, when we talk about some of the businesses where they want to understand the health of the business and things like that, their domain products, right, in the form of business assets play an important part. So the organization depends upon your use cases, business use cases. So business value chain, organization, so it's more than tech, right? What I really want people to understand is that data platforms, ML platforms are more than tech, right? It's not about cool technology, it's about getting the organization, getting the processes in place, understanding the value chain, understanding the use case, and then you prepare your platform architecture. So all these things are very important. So deployment at scale depends upon all this. Yeah.
Thank you so
And
much, Kathy.
another key, yeah, just one point to add, right? So oil and gas industry naturally was they were like the kings in the old world, right? And they were the they were the people sitting on oil, you can understand, right? The kind of wealth they were sitting on, right? So they never felt, right, the need to share data before. Right now they understand how they can progress some of the goals that they have ahead, right? As Misong said, that we are considered to be the monsters, right? Because this industry is always in that ethical dilemma of being kind of a dark industry in terms of carbon emissions and the carbon footprint that it leads to. But now if they have to actually attain those net zero goals, if they have to get into the reduction of carbon emissions, it is important, right, that data plays a great part and they need to share this data. And data sharing is possible, right? Only when you're coming out of your systems, right? The data has to come out of the systems. So now this industry is from last 3 to 4 years, this is embracing cloud, right? Now it is moving to cloud. Early it was all private data centers, they never bothered to come on cloud. There were a lot of issues related to shall I move, what about the data security, what about the data privacy? But I think the industry has gone ahead, understood, right, and has worked its way out. And now, the scale, which we think the industry has to move to, is going to be there. If I talk about oil and gas industry, so I mean, it is estimated that they are going to spend close to, $15.7 billion, right, by 2030, right, to attain their goals. So I think this is big thing, right, for an industry. Industry itself, you see, the industry itself is transforming, right, because they want to get into the greener space. On top of that, technology has to play its part to help them transform. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you, Kathy. Masan, what do you want to add? So, any specific challenge have you encountered from the model perspective? Because there are a whole lot of models, forecasting models, recommendation models, but anything specific that you have encountered in reservoir engineering or in, yeah, you can go ahead.
Before I address this question, I really want to conquer what, like, agree with what Kathy said. And to me, to organizations want to follow certain steps to implement this AI strategy in the daily operation. I typically separated them into three stages. The beginning stage would be the planning part, have some global view, because a lot of times our strategy will be applied globally. But when we frame the design, we have to look into the details of the local situation. The reason is that most of the oil and gas industries carries very unique local market characteristics that will deem the success of those digital solutions. Then, once we finish the planning stage, we go to the design stage. We require those open collaborations among field crews, domain experts, engineers, scientists, and IT professionals. Overall, it's an integrated, multidiscipline team effort. Then during the execution stage, we need to demonstrate the added value through the change management to ensure a smooth technology adoption and transformation. So that's my view regarding the organizational approach to implement this latest digital transformation in our sector. Then, to answer your question regarding the challenges in the reservoir modeling,
Mm-hmm.
yes, the challenge is always we don't have enough data. Like I addressed before, the subsurface heterogeneity and the very limited data we have. Then we have we have to use geostatistics to populate the Earth model for the reservoir simulation. And then at this stage, analog study is a critical backup solution or complement strategy for the reservoir simulation. We have those existing fields, those brownfield already have those more core data, more production data, more development issues, best practice, and the lessons learned. If we think our field, this green field, is so close or analog enough to that brownfield, a lot of lessons learned, best practice can be used in addition to the reservoir simulation.
Thank you, Ms. Song. Thank you for answering this question that regarding the challenges and highlighting on the sustainability part of it. So, Kathy, do you want to add anything on the sustainability? You have already highlighted us on the organizational practices, how we can scale data. So, if you want to highlight on the sustainability or answer this question, like taking automation, ML ops in the industry, any
Yeah.
specific pointers?
Sure. Let me talk about sustainability and then my can add about MLOps. I think sustainability is the challenge throughout, right? It's not, for the oil and gas industry, everybody, right? Everybody has to, reduce the carbon footprint. Everybody has to reduce the energy that they are consuming, right? And if you talk about, optimization, reduction, right? So definitely AI and ML has a lot of role to play. Right. So even simple things, right? Sensors generating data, understanding the data usage, understanding the energy usage, and then recommending the usage patterns, right, to reduce the energy, right? There are tons of use cases, right? These are the simple, very simple ones, right? Every industry has to reduce, right? Oil and gas definitely, right? But even the retail industry or any other industry, right? Everybody has to reduce the carbon footprint. So sustainability is everywhere. Right. If I talk about commodities, especially in agricultural commodities, so one of the use case that we were working with one of our clients is related to understanding the soil parameters, right? Understanding the soil parameters and accordingly ensuring that the right fertilizer inputs or the crop inputs are given, right? So I think it's all about the, and everything is related to sustainability, because you do not want to use harmful chemicals more. You need to do the reduction, right? So sustainability is one key thing which the whole I would say it's a global use case, right? And everybody has to focus. And when I say everybody has to focus, I think all of us have to focus as well, in our homes, right, in terms of energy consumption and all. Yeah. So there's so many use cases in terms of sustainability that we are solving in agriculture, we are solving for some of our clients, right, in terms of energy usage patterns and all.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy, for giving us a nice overview on the sustainability part. Besong, do you want to take this question that person Vishwas has asked on the ML ops? So we have the data, we understand the organization practices, we take the data from sensors, we collect, assemble, validate all the processes we do. I understand the sustainability aspects, and then how do we aggregate and building the models and in an ML ops system? How do we do that? So you can answer it from a general perspective also.
Yeah, generally, I'm trying to understand this question right. So to me, machine learning operation, it has been started a long time ago before this pandemic. Those pandemic just accelerated its development. We call the energy space digitalization or the digital transformation right now. So it's not a problem. I think the industry has well accepted the has well accepted this kind of development trend. So, like I said, and have a global view and look at the detailed problems we have an open collaboration, then we can have a right change management, identify the added value for the end users, let the value chain really take into the consideration into the development deployment, then we can implement it more smoothly. I hope I addressed this question. In terms of the sustainability, I want to add one point to what Miss what Kiati said. To me, once we start to use big data, machine learning, and coupled with domain knowledge, we can reduce uncertainties. We can improve the decision making, improve the efficiencies. So we can do a lot of more preventive strategies to enhance the smooth development of a field. To me, that's the improvement of the sustainability too.
Yeah.
Correct,
Sure.
correct.
Yeah, and to
Yeah,
Vishwas, your question, right, in terms of automation or ML ops, it is the necessity in each and every industry, right? And energy industry is no exception, right? That's where uh, the the data driven organization need to have automation in place, right? So that's where they'll be able to take the data driven decision. If I talk about ML ops, it is important, right? So once your models are ready, right, you productionize your models, you need to ensure that there is feedback loop establish, you need to ensure that models are then self learning. So ML ops is definitely a requirement in each and every industry, and this industry is no exception. Right now, in terms of what's the right way to do, right, that depends upon, some of these things are driven, so some of these things are standard, right? So you definitely need to have ML ops frameworks, right? You really need to have those pipelines set up, right? And one of the key thing is, generally what happens is, um, something that one of the challenge that we incurred, when we were starting, right? So generally what happens is, you know you want to do it end to end, right? When you want to, so you want to source the data, you want to set up data pipelines, and you want to have a model, then you want to have a feedback loop in, right? But sometimes, right, when you're working on that, so you can't have it your own standards completely, right? So there are standards that you define in terms of data ingestion and data engineering, then you define your standards in terms of models, right? Then you define your standards in terms of feedback loop, right? How that feedback loop would go on. So a well defined framework is required, right? And that gives you the platform capabilities to deploy any ML model or a data engineering solution. And as I said, while the platform, is important, right? But then platform needs to ensure that it is taking the organization, the process part, and other things into consideration. You just don't think from a technology standpoint anything. That's the key message that I would want to give, right? Because with technology you're always solving a business problem. You need to understand first the business problem, and then you need to talk about technology, right? So that's how you should be going about it, right? So it's not a problem statement, it's a necessity for our industry as well.
Totally agree.
Yeah, thank you. That's the reason that any data scientist won't be able to capture those thoughts and put it in place, because you are so experienced. That's the pleasure of having you here. You will highlight the business, the process, and then go into technology, not look into technology at first. Yeah. And what do you think, Kathy and Mesong, to both of you, like one of you can take up, and then the other one, that the most potential use cases where it is heeding, means what people are asking, so must to have, we should know. Yeah, in your domain.
Uh, in my domain, and I would think uh, for the data scientist to develop some basic understanding of those data. So basically, that's some basic domain knowledge in the oil and gas, which could include geology, geophysics, petrophysics, reservoir engineering, drilling engineering, completion engineering, facility. Those are all fun stuff. So, do you want to be the expert? Not necessarily. Do you want to know a little bit? So, when you talk with when a data scientist talks with a petrotech people, at least they are on the same page, talking about this in the same language. So that's what I think a data scientist would like to have. Then, as a petrotech, on the opposite side, I would think for example, use me as an example. I want to know the underlying technology of this data. So understand how the data was collected, then I can use it effectively. And overall, together as a team, we need to understand the value chain of the data. What's the business driver for the end user to use this data? Then we know what's the problem statement. Then we can divide it and conquer it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's the right thing. Yeah, Kathy, please.
Yeah, so use cases, Sharmishta, we also, we shared in the beginning. I think those are the key use cases, right? Digital twins for advanced analytics is important, right? You need to have all your assets, digital twins, right? If you want to understand anything on the asset performance. Then smart grids we talked about, right? All the sensors generating the data, right? Then,
Mhm,
and these sensors are so much used in the agricultural industry, as I talked about, right? To understand, the soil parameters, to understand the weather
mhm.
conditions, and accordingly, suggest you or recommend you the crop inputs that are required. So I'll share a very small story, as just to build on to what Miss Song said, right? It is important for data scientists to understand, or the data folks to understand, the business behind, right? So So we've set up this, digital twin, which is, the complete, the refining facility, right? And each and every machine in the refining facility, and when, and refining, when I'm talking about, the vegetable oil refining, right? Where the soya is crushed and the oil is taken out, right? So we defined, right, the complete. Once the asset twin was, defined, we actually spoke to a process expert, right, to understand that crushing process, right?
Mhm.
To understand, how, when the data, and there are so many important things to understand, right? For example, when a soya is crushed and the oil is taken out, right? So there is, soya meal produced, which is used as, as food for animals, right? And that, and then the oil is produced, so what remains goes as food for the, animals. Now, what has to be the exact protein content in that, meal that is left is very important, right? Because if your protein content exceeds a certain percentage, then you would not get the right price for it, right? To get the right price for that meal, the protein content has to be in certain ranges, right? And that is the kind of optimization that you need to introduce in that process, using, the ml models, right? So that you get the maximum meal with the right protein content, so that extra protein doesn't go into the oil, because extra protein going into oil is not fetching you anything. The
Mhm.
protein content which is going low in the meal is not fetching you anything, right? So you need to optimize it so that you get the best price for the oil, you get the best price for the meal, right? So those things
Mhm.
are very important, right? And it is important to understand. And we had a proper session to understand that crushing process. So it is important to get the right value. You understand the business problem fully that you're solving. Don't make inferences about what data is telling you, right? So what data is telling you is one story, what process experts will tell you is another story. You need to marry both the stories to get the right value out of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Miss Song, what do you think about it? We have already talked about IoT getting the data. Anything you would add to Kathy's viewpoint, or you would like to add about robotic and ARVR in your industry?
Yes, and one IoT example I saw is in the oil gas industry, we use sensors to monitor the inventory level of those onshore oil tanks. So, oh, right now, some of them are connected to a cloud-based digital dashboard for the real-time inventory check. So once the fluid level in the oil tank reaches certain height, then the system can automatically dispatch trucks to empty those tanks. So that is one simple yet very useful IoT application in the oil and gas industry. So for the digital twins, want to share one of the example I saw in the Dow Chemical. It's not upstream, it's downstream, but the idea, the implementation is similar. In their control room, the feedback and feed forward loop are used to automatically control the operations, temperature, pressure, in order to have the right uh, cracker unit operation to crack those crude oil into the ethylenes they want to have as a final product. But those results are really monitored, and the process can be further optimized by the domain expert, those people in the refinery industry with 20 or 30 years experience. So overall, I think it's not just the intelligent artificial intelligence. It, I would call it it's augmented intelligence. It's human intelligence coupled with the AI strategies, AI technology, further develop, enhance each other, make the best decision for the process, and select the right data to use.
Yeah. So, do you mean to say active learning means where human also comes into picture and ensures that the process optimization is at up to the standard?
Of course, I always believe that saying that never too old to learn.
Okay, great, great. Yeah, Kathy. My question to you is the same. Like, we also want to understand from data point. Have we already matured to that state to take into consideration AR, VR, robotics, or even ethics in the oil and natural gas industry?
We have matured. It's a journey, right? I don't think so we have matured, right? But that's going to be the future. That's definitely going to be the future. And if you talk about ARVR, see the kind of use case or kind of potential it provides in the industry, right? I think the safety of the people is one of the key concern, right? And with ARVR, I think it is important. There is a lot that can be achieved for workers safety or the staff safety. So definitely there is use case, but I think it's a journey that the industry yet need to make, right? Frankly, openly speaking, I haven't worked on any AR/VR use case as yet, and neither have discussed with clients. But do I see that too far away? No, I don't see that too far away, right? I think even AR/VR as a technology is going through change. Everything is going to AR, VR, Web 3.0. Though I think that transition is going to be, we'll soon see that in next 3 to 5 years happening, but right now not.
And ethics, anything related to ethics,
Yeah.
fairness, privacy?
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is one which which we earlier also said. When we talk about ethics, this industry is always like at both sides, right? We consider this to be the one which is causing harm to the environment, but we know that we cannot survive without this industry, right? People will not have food at the table if this industry is not there, right? So in
Correct,
terms of
correct.
yeah, so in terms of if I talk about ethical AI, definitely ethical AI is important, not just for this industry, for every industry, especially even even AI itself, right? Needs to ensure that you are using uh, the energy that it takes, right, in terms of model, right, is also one of the things. So I think we are in that dilemma. I think it is important to measure all the aspects, right? It is important to measure all the aspects. It is important to see what this is going to lead to, right, from all standpoint. But running the business will always remain the key priority for the corporates, and that still is something that we will always be juggling with.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's in context,
yeah.
things are right or wrong, right?
Thanks,
it's
Kathy.
it's not
Mhm.
just something plain right or plain wrong.
I also agree with what Kiata said, and AI is kind of a relatively new in terms of some traditional industry. So this technology is evolving itself right now. During the development stage, we figure out what else we could do. One example, outside oil and gas industry will be use the cookie to collect the data while we surf online. And before people take for granted, and the companies or internet companies like Facebook, like Google, they collect those data without notifying the end users. But now with this issue evolved to the surface, more and more people are asking for the confidentiality and the privacy about the internet data. As a private user, then when I go to website, there always pop up a screen ask me whether you accept our cookie settings. Now we have option to share or
So,
not share our internet surfing data. So I see that's a huge progress in terms of implementing or recognizing the ethics issue in the AI. And in the oil and gas industry, due to the confidentiality, also due to the value of the data, we couldn't openly share those data without the permission. So
mhm.
but sometimes I totally agree with Katie that we need to have some sort of open collaboration to share the data. How to share the data under the regulated or agreed upon conditions. This is a very unique case, probably will be different for each company and different for each field. So again, there's no one suite fit all situation, one solution fit all situation. We will tailor each case differently on the AI ethic part in the oil and gas industry.
Correct. So we have to have open collaboration to share and learn from each other's data. Otherwise, it's become sensitive, and we will learn into get even fines, right, from the laws and regulatory bodies. Yeah, and so the how do you think it's evolving, Rohit? So the last questions, the most important question, maybe. What do you think, the Kathy? What advice do you have for people who want to aspire to be a data person as well as lead the track like you, energy and utilities? So, do they need a separate domain knowledge also, or being as they grow with the data, they will become matured enough to handle those?
Yeah. So one advice that I would like to give is, understand the data that you're working on. If you're not understanding what that data means, right, I think then that's definitely a problem. Then you will never be able to solve a business problem. As long as you're understanding that data, you're doing good, right? So understand the data, and understanding the data would need some domain knowledge. I won't say that you need to be domain experts, but you need to, have some understanding of the business. As long as you do that, you'll be able to ask right set of questions, you'll be able to model it right, you will be able to use it right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree with Kathy, and the advice I would provide or give would be open minded, keep learning the new technology. I remember in 2000, the tech companies had a crash, and at that time they start to use the open source business model for their industry, and which demonstrated the power of collaborative learning. So in the workplace, we need to constantly upscale and rescale ourselves. So for the IT people, get to know the domain knowledge and at least talk with engineers and geologists in same or similar language, understand what they are talking about. For the petrotech people like me, I want to improve the digital literacy. So oh, the domain knowledge can be coupled with IT skills, then we can have a better decision making, a better open collaboration to improve the efficiency.
Yeah, since I'm very curious, since you raised this question of open source, so just curious to ask both of you one by one. Maybe you can take up, like, do you think that like a data scientist like me, if we take up open source, any forecasting models or any recommendations or anything, right, or a classification regression, and we tweak it to your domain? So is that going to help me in the initial run, and then slowly I build on the domain knowledge, or I have to be super data scientist to learn reinforcement learning, all the jargons and very advanced techniques to be an expert in your domain?
Uh, Sharmishta, just to take a model and apply it to any business problem, I'm not a fan of that stuff, right? Frankly speaking, for me, even if you're talking about some of the things that you definitely can, right? I'm not saying that throughout, right? End to end value chain probably will not be,
It will
but if you
not be.
talk about a particular one, definitely you could, right? And when I say this, so for example, you know uh, there is an asset that, and on top of that there is a camera, and whatever is going in, let's say, a seed is going in for crushing into that machine, right? And you're taking the images, and we want to identify, we know that a particular size, would lead to the right output, and you want to have, those kind of images coming out, and you want to classify it whether it's the right fit size or not right fit size. I think those kind of things probably you can, right? That's where, because that's that problem statement is just a classification kind of a problem statement, right? It doesn't need much of a domain, right? But if you want to connect that story end to end, right, that's where you need to know the process. So there is no yes or no to it. To some parts, yes, you can get started, right? When you get started and you see some results, that gives you motivation, and that gives you an environment to speak to the fellow people who are involved in the process, and you learn on the job. That is definitely one option. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure if I answered correctly, based on what you wanted to know, but
Yeah,
yeah.
this was a random question because Miss Song picked up the topic of open source. And what do you think, Miss Song? Absolutely correct, Kathy. Means end to end we cannot build, but maybe if I am looking at a problem like this, a regression problem, I have to predict the forecast, the time. At that part, I could take in and then put it in this entire ecosystem and see how does the feedback loop is working, how the prediction is yielding the results, how much accurate I am, and build stitch it to the entire story, and see, of course, see the business metrics what is yielding, right?
Yeah, but to identify the right parameters for your model, you need to
Uh,
know that process. You need to know that, right? So that you're not missing onto the right parameter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nowadays, a lot of open source available in the tech side, different algorithm package. But in order to identify whether that algorithm is applicable to this process, we need to really have a deep knowledge about the process first. What's the
mhm.
problem we have? How we want to solve it? And in order to solve it, what kind of algorithm we want to use? What kind of feedback, feed forward control loop we want to use? And once break down to that detailed level, then we know whether that algorithm open source from the open source can be implemented in my coding. So, need to start in the with the business sense first, understand the business value, then to the detailed implementation of the steps, open source will be helpful. That's my personal view.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, any other thing you would like to talk about, or we are almost ending the conversations? We are near to the end. So, Kathy, any advice or any tips or any strategy you would like to your viewers to know?
As my song said, keep learning. I myself am learning, right? So I started my data journey not very long ago. It's only 3 years back I started my data journey. I had strength of the domain, then I built onto the data knowledge. Now I'm into learning ML, right? Having set up and architected data platforms. Now I'm taking into moving it and taking it to advanced analytics side, right, where I'm learning ML. So I think the learning journey should not stop. That should keep on moving. That's what I will say, and I completely concur that with what Misong said. Never stop learning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I said before. Thank you. It's never too old to learn. So keep
Yeah,
learning, especially with digitalization. And what I found out is the silver lining of this pandemic is virtual learning classes online right now. There are tons of resources available to everybody. If you could log in online, you can go to webinars. You can go to college website, school website to find those free webinars and a lot of free open source for us.
yeah. Thank you so much. So, this information should help the young learners or the new people who are new into this industry or in the field of data. So, be we have to be on time with the industry. We should be more of, so we should be learning ahead what the industry is moving to, right? Yeah. So, thank you so much. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Miss Song, for your valuable time in a Saturday evening and morning for you. It's too early for you, Miss Song. So we hope to invite you again to share some other insights some other day. Thank you once again.
It's really my greatest pleasure and honor to share my insights or my experience with Kathy and you and with the audience. I look forward to taking you guys' feedback to the industry and also to my daily study loop to further enhance myself too.
yeah.
Yeah, Sure, sure.
Thank you, Sharmishta and Masong. I mean, amazing platform. I'm really happy for the conversation that we had. It was really an enriching hour. So thank you to Sharmishta, Masong, and the audience. Good questions coming up. So it was really enriching session. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I will post in all social channels. Those who have missed, they can watch the session again live, not live, the recorded. So there are. So Amita has been giving comment, very interesting discussions, and Vijay also had given some comments. These are not questions. So this one, yeah, yeah. So we have good feedback about the session. We should take it forward. If any of your time, if you think there are more things to discuss, we can again get in touch and discuss with the audience. It helps the general public also to get aware of data, as well as your very specific domain knowledge that both of you bring to the table. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.